here to talk about how content gets to where it lives and what it costs. I'm Tony, I'm CEO of RampRate. In a nutshell, we have two sides of our business. One, we manage IT spend, a little over $1 billion a year, for most of the big media companies and financial services firms. On the other side, we use our transactional index on the deals that we've managed to help companies large like Microsoft and Intel, etc., go to market and business plan for the transformation of the market. That said, we've got an esteemed panelist, which outnumber participants. Okay, you know, who's got a disease? Diarrhea of Bill Carell. Introduce yourself, please.
Thanks, Tony. My name is Bill Carell. I recently been with Sun Microsystems. I was Director of Communications, Media, and Entertainment for Sun's Corporate Development Group. We sourced and managed Sun's venture activity. We made investments in MPEG-4 and web publishing companies and DRM technologies, asset management platforms to support and fill Sun product gaps.
Everything under the sun?
Everything under the sun. And recently I've been doing some technology consulting for digital media and telecommunications companies.
Thank you. Rob?
My name is Rob Pate, Director of Global Consumer Electronics Marketing for Seagate Technology. You can't make as many funny Seagate puns as you can Sun puns, so I'll forego that. I am in charge of marketing for the business unit of Seagate that provides storage into new consumer electronics devices such as digital video recorders, MP3 players, portable media players, the automobile, the mobile phone, and other cool gadgets that one day will have a hard drive in them.
Mr. James, watch out. You have Mr. Stubbs in the audience.
My name is Bradley James. I am Vice President of Technology for Technicolor. I represent their electronic content distribution services organization. My focus is really trying to assist the studios to provide the same types of policies and logistics fulfillment as they have in the traditional realm today around electronic content distribution.
Bill from the Kodak That Could.
My name is Bill Holmes. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Product Strategy at Vivex. For those who are not familiar with Vivex, we're a technology and media company. We develop technologies that allow for digital distribution of content within the home and across the net. So,
Larry, there's always one content guy in the crowd.
Yeah, gotta have one of us. Larry Namer, founder of E! Entertainment Television, a few other cable networks along the way. Kind of got thrust into the position of looking at the impact of technology on the underlying business and media, and it's kind of become a specialty in the last few years. 2 years I was primarily sold Microsoft. Bill's group there and Paul Allen just recently finished looking at similar kinds of issues for Radio Shack. Not sure whether anybody listens, but I've got opinions.
Last but not least.
Hi, I'm Harshal Sanghi from Motorola Ventures, based in the Valley. Part of the job is to basically look at enterprising new promising startups, invest in them, and help grow the companies, add value by partnering with Motorola and driving our strategy. In a previous life, I launched the first DirecTV TiVo products when I was at Philips, and I also was then moved on to multi-room DVR, a company called Ucentric, and later sold to Motorola. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Always switching.
And I'd like to go around the room and have each of you give us your bio, and then we're done. Have a nice day.
they're all my relatives.
In a market that's really transformed, at the end of the day, we really have to look at where money comes from and who pays for it, across which pipes are they delivered. Those are some of the key components. No one really talks about those issues. Content, we're aggregated with boxes, with gateways, with telecom, cable operations, digital broadcast, data casting, 100 different ways to get content in and out of the home, in and out of our devices, in and out of our businesses. The winners of the space are the ones that correctly understand business models for delivering how it revenue shares with the content owner, which pipes it moves across, what the client acquisition cost is. It's pretty formulaic these days. So as we look into the future over the next couple of years, I don't think it's too hard to predict to really kind of find out where digital content lives, how it gets there through pay. So the panels, which is great on every aspect, from storage to codecs to digital gateways and chips and just about everything. We'll kind of talk about these things. The first chart I brought in was just, it's about 6 months old, but at Ramprate, in the research division, we track the trends, about 400 digital media companies and online services, and we look at exactly how much money actually goes to the creators and the publishers at 18 or 20%, and you move into marketing and advertising at 22.2%, digital transport, delivery changes, all sorts of these things. Of course, you have your giant iTunes that moves in that space. But really what we want to understand is what those models are going forward, what's actually going to work. So I guess I'm going to move into the first panel question, and then I'll go through a couple other slides in a minute. And we want to talk about and put a finite direction around what is the central device. You know, is it going to be the cell phone with 1 terabyte on it, or the next generation set-top box? What is going to be the central device in 2 years as computers have transmuted into something else? I'd like to start that out with Bill.
Well, what the next device will look like. Certainly it'll have a significant amount of processing capabilities. It'll include some sort of onboard storage, as well as a network interface to a network-attached storage device, I suspect, over the home entertainment network link. I suspect it'll have a DVD player input, as well as a TV tuner. So what have I just described? I've described a PC, I've described a set-top box, at least where they're headed. I've described a game console. So, you know, I think the devices we have are going to be, you know, continuing to be central to the home. I think the key ingredient is going to be more of a standardized middleware component, and then, you know, whatever becomes the dominant home entertainment network protocol.
DivX, what's it called, and why hasn't it been created already? I mean, the whole world's 802 connected. There's been devices for 3 years. Sony hasn't come out with a product that does all these types of things, or is Panasonic or everyone else. What's it going to be called, and why isn't it already here?
Well, I think in terms of why it's not already here is there's a lot of people obviously who have interest in this space, and so there's a lot of efforts to try to reach consensus, and sometimes that causes delays in market development as people are trying to essentially reach consensus with a number of different agendas. So there certainly have been standards organizations that have tried to establish some sort of commonality between how these devices will communicate. But one could look at that and say that's actually had, you know, a delaying effort as opposed to, you know, a move where somebody comes out with the device and essentially, to use the metaphor of iPod, accelerates the market around a variety of ancillary services. So with that said, you know, we certainly think that we will play a role in that connected home, but there will also be other technologies there. Some of them will be standards, and others will be, you know, essentially de facto standards. Our particular approach has never been to work through standards bodies, but rather to focus on creating value for consumers and to get that pulled into devices. So, as you mentioned, devices in the future will have a lot of different processing power requirements, and as a result, will ultimately, I think, support a variety of different standards. So, you know, the challenge is on the chip guys in having to support a variety of different formats, as, you know, essentially the market can't settle on one solution.
Tony, I'm actually going to disagree with something you just said, which is that Sony doesn't make that device. They actually do, and they sell it in Japan.
Exactly.
Matsushita sells it in Japan, JDC sells it in Japan, so on and so forth. And that brings up a very key issue in terms of the central device in the digital home. Distribution is the key. Today, the central device for content is divided between the PC for music and the digital video recorder for video content. Why is that? Because the primary way of obtaining music is through the PC. The primary way of obtaining video in the home and the primary distribution of video on the home is in the US between cable and satellite. In Japan and in Asia, it's a very different situation, and somewhat of a hybrid of the two in Europe. So that this key central device in the home is going to be largely dependent on how the future business and distribution models look for digital content. And that's what it's going to be in the US. And today we've got people who are just starting to use their DVRs and are, wow, you know, they're just amazed by it when they first use it. We've uncovered research from one research firm that actually states they've never seen in their 25 years of existence consumers talk about a device with such passion and love as the DVR. They actually call it the love machine. And so it's happened that way because the DVR comes with cable or satellite service.
Excellent point.
Yeah.
So Motorola, you're a big position in a lot of companies, including you make those things called set-top boxes. You've been in a position from chips and boxes and all sorts of standpoints to deliver something to the U.S. market and become the new gateway. So what does the new device look like? You're making investments to maybe build into that. You've got competitors with Cisco and partnerships that they have with content and alternative deliveries. What is your move in that market? What are you going to invest in? What's it going to look like?
All right, I actually will take a different tack here. We'll just mention, what the capabilities of the central device in the home will have. So he said processing, storage, network interface, and tuner, and he added DVD to it. I actually say the central, device in the home is actually the person, the consumer. Okay, we want to start with the consumer, and if you take it from there.
Can you put chips in that?
Well, apart from chips, you have processing power in there, you've got storage in there, you've got a network interface in there, and you're tuning all the time.
Never really thought of myself as
So,
a device.
well, exactly. So the whole point is this: consumers want consume content, different kinds of content in different settings, and they want to take it with them, and just have different experiences at different times. And so we don't believe there's going to be any one device that's going to sort of own everything. Obviously, the set-top, whether we like it or not, is going to play a big part. The set-top with the DVR / media center, whatever you want to call it, is going to play a big part in the home. But you're also going to have, cell phones, rightfully so, which are going to have huge processing power. And if you really go outside of the U.S. And look at Asia, I mean, the first PC that people are going to have is going to be a cell phone. I mean, if I take this is really a PC in terms of processing power and what I can do over there. So, especially if you just look at the penetration rates of PCs elsewhere versus that of cell phones. What are we investing in? The key is not just, you can't have like this one Uber device with everything in it, but what we're looking at is how do you move content between these devices? How do you enable the consumer to take it from one place, take one experience from one setting to another. If he's in the middle of watching a show and he wants to go to the bedroom, well, how does he then go and just flick a button and pick it up over there, right? In the morning, automatically your content is filled up, you go in the car, and the tunes that you like, or the news you like, or the weather, or the traffic automatically comes up. How do you make that happen? That's really where we're focusing on, is on user experiences and sort of seamless mobility of content and enabling that.
Thank you. Mr. James, sitting inside of Sony for years, looking at the Earth turn, now at Technicolor. What do you see as the device? And I really want you to bridge into one question about game consoles. And how does that bridge the gap? Is that the unifying place?
Well, there's definitely a need for a Trojan horse to get into the living room, to be that central hub for media distribution. I think part of the problem that we have in the U.S. right now is we've been dealing with the same cable network for years. We're dealing with the same remote controls for years. There's no real need necessarily to introduce wireless into the home, wireless network, and what's the added value to a consumer to actually enable a wireless
Motorola has a box in the house already.
Absolutely.
Can they adapt?
Absolutely. I have a Linksys Media Center that I've had for years.
Well,
This Media Center PC's been around for some time. People aren't deploying there. My hope is that consoles like the PS3 like the Xbox and a lot of the next generation set-top boxes will provide those added values for consumers to turn up networks and actually search for added value as opposed to sitting in front of my television and flipping through channels. At the end of the day, consumers want to be entertained. I don't want to have to work to get entertained. I want to sit down and watch what I want to watch. I think that the set-top box in the next couple of years, if we were talking about just set-top boxes, it's really going to be plugged into the cable systems. Hopefully with added value through a lot of triple play and home run opportunities to drive people to turn out home networks. But I do believe that the cable system will actually lead the way for networks.
Come on, you can't bet on the delivery mechanism. That's like on page
I'm an
2.
entertainment guy, but
That's page
just
2.
tell you how I see it.
Tony, I think we'd be remiss too if, while we're talking about the device, we didn't address that, everything that's being discussed here introduces another level of complexity for us as consumers, and I think that's been one of the biggest impediments to, the lack of network and some of these device deployments. And what I think that's going to create is an environment where, in the long run, there's not going to be an Uber device. I think actually there is probably going to be a trend towards a thinner client type of model that is network aware and has some minimal amount of storage and processing capabilities, but you're going to depend on the network itself, whether that network is provided by your cable provider or telco or whoever it may be, to provide a lot of the functionality that we're talking about right now for media storage, certainly for time shifting and place shifting of traditional broadcast programming, and for personalized media experiences. And no matter what type of economics in terms of reduced costs we're going to see for some of these devices, those costs will probably not mimic the economics associated with placing some of this functionality in the network and improving the ease of use for the mass audience, which is still the target for consumer electronics companies, certainly for content companies, and increasingly for certainly for the network providers themselves.
Rob, so we put a terabyte of storage in the house, you do your deal with Motorola and SA, and we go on our way. What's the technical challenges? We have the cost that's dropping, what are the technical challenges on the hardware side that you're familiar with?
The three factors that are going to make up any network and where any sort of entertainment network needs to figure out the right balance in terms of optimization or CPU power, network bandwidth, and storage. And where are those three going to be placed in a network that is going to deliver the service that consumers expect? Bill thinks it's going to be a thin client in the home. That's one theory about how it's going to work. It hasn't worked in the past. Don't know if it's going to work in the future. The CPU requirements and the network requirements are massive. We have a lot of people wanting to pause and rewind TV. But there are networks in the world that are looking for minimal functionality of just being able to, maybe download programs or do video on demand or things like that. The cost of storage, the cost of CPU power, the cost of networks continually gets driven down over the years, and that's not going to stop. But at some point today and for the near future, I think you have to kind of look at where do you rationalize those costs, and most companies today and into the near future are saying that it's going to be a device in the home or a series of devices in the home that will allow you to move content from one place to another, right? The three-screen strategy is something that a lot of companies are looking at and saying, we want to put this in the consumer's hands.
Great, Motorola. I was at a trade show, we should have the name of our company here as opposed to person, because Motorola, I gotta call you by your.
That's fine, I have no problem.
I know all your names, but I'm.
So, I mean, I think it's going to be a hybrid approach. I don't think, you're going to have, like I said earlier, either a thin client or a fat client approach. I think you're going to have both. You're going to have storage in the home, on your DVR, and that's gonna, thanks to Seagate and our friends there, they're gonna, bring the cost down, increase the storage capacity, or keep the cost the same and increase the storage capacity.
Or else, right?
Huh?
Or else.
Or else, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I hear another negotiation coming.
So, so you're gonna have that, and you're also gonna have, sort of what you're already starting to see, and Time Warner just started that with the network PVR. So you have that as well, and then we just made an acquisition of a company called Broadbus, where you basically got storage in the network, and you can access it not just on your set-top in the home, but if I'm out there and I want to access it on my cell phone, I'll be able to transfer it over the network and access my content here. So that's sort of the model and how we see you. You have to enable the network, to enable the storage at the back end, and you've got to enable the processing power on the clients.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I think that hybrid model is certainly the way things are, well, they're already playing out that way. Except in countries where you don't necessarily see significant amount of PC take-up or digital television service take-up yet, China and India probably being the most notable.
Yep.
I suspect there you'll see a much more network-centric model versus a device model for entertainment and other communication services.
So we're going to move on to the next question, and we're going to understand codecs, media formats, standards, all that stuff. How important is that? And again, we're going to finite stuff over the next 2 years. I want to understand the implications of the market as it relates to those issues and for solving themselves over the short term. Typically.
So I think if I understand the question correctly, you're asking about the roadmap for codecs and what type of technologies will be deployed. And my answer is similar to what's going on in the device question. There's not going to be one. And unfortunately, in the case of the silicon vendors, they're picking up the tab for the forces that are competing in the market. So chips will support DivX, Windows Media Video, H.264. And other codecs that are out there to the extent that, that those technologies are used to create content that's desirable to consumers. So I think there will be a bunch of that, but at the end of the day, the point I wanted to come back to, just briefly touching on from the previous comment, is around the ease of use. And one of the challenges you have today is that a lot of this behavior is being driven by consumers' desire to move content around. So we're talking about all these different devices, a bunch of different devices will be out there, and consumers want the ability to move that around. It's part of their digital lifestyle now. And a big issue that people are facing from ease of use is around the desire of the content owners to protect that content, sometimes keeping it captive on a box or moving it to only one other device, and a consumer's desire to have a personal media experience with that, essentially owning that collection, being able to take it where they want. So the codecs that will allow that to happen are one part, but essentially there's the companion of that, which is protection of content or non-protection of content. And again, to the extent that there's multiple technologies out there, they're going to be supported at the silicon level. But from an ease of use perspective, it's a major barrier right now, as the threat, as I see it, of new media is really prohibiting the consumer to have the experience that they want. And until we overcome that gap, these ease of use questions are going to continue to really delay, I think, the evolution of the market. So,
Larry, and yes, we're going to pick on you a lot more later, but you had all this internet delivery and IPTV and VOD, and you're very much a classic, I'm not going to say broadcaster, content delivery company, creation, aggregation, delivery across VOD. When you're approached with ideas around digital delivery with alternative transports other than cable, what are the questions that you're asking yourself?
Well, first, to understand how, folks in my position will play the game. We don't have the deep pockets of big media companies, but then again, we don't have the agendas that we have to protect either, so we look at this stuff a little differently. Without unlimited cash flow, you guys talked about all this stuff, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. For a small independent like me, if I'm off a year, I'm dead. On Time Warner, it's much more.
Small with 15 million subs.
So it's different. Well, just take Eurocinema. We started Eurocinema essentially because we have the belief that regardless of what you call the device, storage attached to a television set changes everything. The threshold for starting new services comes down so much that we can begin to serve niches, and here's where the contradiction is that I find quite funny with what a lot of you guys do, is you talk about content with the very people that don't want to see this succeed because they'd rather put their head in the sand and make believe you're going to go away. Which is interesting because then you take that feedback and you start to develop based on people who essentially don't want to see you exist. Because if you look at the presidents of the top media companies, all going to retire within 5 years, and they really couldn't care, you know, what the 5 to 10 year outlook looks. But Eurocinema was very interesting. We identified, I'm a firm believer, even though I come from the linear TV world, I no longer believe in linear television. When you have storage attached, it allows the viewer to watch what they want when they want it. How that happens really is totally irrelevant. We noticed that there's a niche in the market that people who like foreign films, whether they come from Europe and are native speakers, or they're foreign film fans, they just love film, incredibly underserved by media today in all forms. If you're a fan of foreign films, if you live in New York, there's 2 theaters. If you live in LA, there's 1. If you live in Des Moines, there's none. So by being able to go in and not have to absorb all the cost of infrastructure and overhead for 24/7, we created a service, essentially serves up 15 current foreign films a month. We present it, not just slapping it on there and saying, here, look at the technology, it's wonderful, but we actually have hosts. We created for the VOD platform, we go through the cable operators, because one of the missing ingredients for us is the ability to market and get to the consumer and let them know that this exists. Cable operators have tremendous amount of marketing resources, they control 2 minutes per hour of every TV network out there, and they only use 60%. So by going in there and utilizing, they need to propel digital, they're looking to propel their DVRs, we use their unsold local avails, we get marketing essentially for free. It sends people to buy something. People who like foreign films are incredibly passionate about it. They spend a disproportionate amount of their disposable income. So by going in at a $3.95 per movie rate, we're experiencing take rates in Des Moines similar to what we experience in New York. We're 6 months old, 13.5 million subs, growing about 500,000 a month. Us and anime are probably the success stories in the on-demand entertainment world. I mean, and that we're actually going to make money. We think that creates lots more entrepreneurs to be able to come in and see a path towards profitability with technologies exist today.
Does that mean you're going to fund their content projects?
We are getting involved in funding films. We'll get involved in funding films so that we can make sure that our content supply is
Fantastic.
Tony, just one comment regarding your codec question. When I was wearing my ventures hat, it seemed like, and I don't know if your experience has been similar, but it seemed like I was getting a proposal at least once a week from another mathematician who's come up with another algorithm for codec. Well, no, I mean, they're all actually, very interesting if you're into, the math and physics of data compression. But, were they realistic from a market standpoint? Absolutely not. And I think, if you look at what's gone on into the creation of, some of the codecs that, we know and love today, whether it's MPEG 2 or MPEG 4 or Windows Media or, Real Video or whatever, there are so many components that are required for success of a particular codec above and beyond the algorithm. So I think that, while we'll continue to see, codecs kind of proliferate, there's going to be someone who's going to, and it seems like any mathematician who's doing his doctoral thesis is going to come up with a codec practically. Because it's a challenging problem to face, to solve. But to, turn that into a realistic market opportunity and have it proliferate in the digital media world is, there's a pretty wide gulf between those two things. So if there's any of you out there, thinking that you've got the latest and greatest codec, you've got to think through the other components if you think it's going to get funded and it's actually going to gain adoption and acceptance.
Yeah, we've already done it, so it's over.
No, I totally agree. I mean, the whole thing, you got to look, there was a panel yesterday with they had someone from Philips Semiconductor, NXP here, right? And the cost to make a silicon is basically around $30 million, right? At the end of the day, when you're done with it and really get it out to production. So if you look at it, and if you have a new compression algorithm, you're spending $30 million to get it into the hardware. Okay, you've got to have a market size that's at least 20 million, starting off with 20 million to make it interesting to even start that project, right? Otherwise, you're never going to recoup the cost on that. So proprietary codecs, and then the whole thing is you've got to have a real 3 to 5x improvement over the current compression in order for it to really.
Okay, no math. Rob, can a market-changing device, iPod, enforce a market monopoly, or will new entrants need it to be standards-based to be competitive?
I don't have a good answer for that.
Good. Next panelist, please.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
I didn't write it.
That's a long question. Come on.
This was tough. Well, is there still a place for proprietary formats in the digital home?
Well, obviously there are, because today proprietary formats proliferate, and people, they gripe about it and then they get over it, right? They gripe about the fact that video stays on their set-top box and can't be moved to the PC easily.
There's only an average of 22 songs that have been purchased by an individual user on an iPod. So it just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
Right, and at the same time, if you look at business models and who's going to make money off of the formats, certainly Apple's been pretty successful in taking their proprietary format to the market, pursuant to the conversation we just had.
Mr. James, formerly of Sony, what's your comment on proprietary formats?
Well, and talk about codecs as well. I think codecs are definitely important from the perspective of formatting and quality. But it really comes down to the video RAM. And when you're sitting within a closed environment, you're sitting within a service provider's environment, there's a perception to a consumer, I don't actually own anything. I'm using something, I'm using the service, but I don't actually own the music that I purchase on iTunes. If you look at it, and I love your quote, yes, 22 songs per iPod device sold. That's not even scratching the music market. People are buying CDs, people are ripping their CDs and putting them on their iPods. And the way you know that is because the iPod is blowing up like gangbusters. The iTunes, which owns over 70% of the download market, is not taking off. A lot of that comes down to interoperability. And my fear is that we'll go down the same path with video content that we've gone down with music, which is it will go into a monopolistic or
More balkanized.
Exactly. It'll be a very small market. Consumers will still go, and I still think the disc is going to be a huge market for the foreseeable future. But I think that so long as the consumer has the feeling that I can't do with this content what I want to do with this content, I'm going to refrain from going to new formats, new electronic formats. And so I think DRMs, so long as we're identifying an asset in a global DRM over a services network, and not a unique asset, where I can allow a consumer to actually do the same porting and enable the same rights that I can on a CD today, on a disc in some regards today. We're not going to see the market necessarily take off.
I just want to add to that. I mean, clearly, 22 songs per person, the iPod would never have been a success if that was all people were using it for. So, let's be clear, if it didn't support MP3, which was ubiquitous and in great abundance on hard drives, then people wouldn't have bought these devices. And so, if you come out with a proprietary format, you better have a huge library of content in that format, or else there's no desire. There's enough tools out there already for digital media, and it's been a challenge enough to get support on those across devices. The next challenge is obviously the DRM systems, but if Apple had stuck to their own format, their own proprietary DRM, I'm sure it would have failed.
We did that at Sony.
Yeah, I heard about that.
We examine choosing the right business model, and we start drilling down into cost and the separation of costs and who pays. You look at operating income before projected approaches to digital home, white label portals, co-marketing, branded portals, and end-to-end sponsored content. We broadcast been working for a long time. Advertising is all the rage with Google. We look at who's going to pay for this content. Is it our eyeballs? Is it our pocketbooks? Is it going to be underwritten by the cell phone manufacturers to long-term subscriber broadband. We look at being underwater on each of these business models for 1, 2, 3, 4 years, even from small operations. I'd like to know first, because you talked last, Mr. Divitz, tell me about next generation content services and where you expect to get your next dime from, which you're in every device and format in the world.
Well, so in Divick's case, we have a number of different angles to the business model. Obviously, there's a business model around, supported devices, a royalty model around licensing. But as far as the content, I think that, people are misled if they believe that anybody but the studios at the end of the day will make money from the content. Coming through the TV, the content is a model to, basically derive revenue from advertising. So that's where a lot of the attention is now is, the content deals that are being done are about eyeballs. The studios are cutting a lot of deals with people where essentially there's a lot of companies clamoring for attention right now, and you've got a lot of big brands with the studios, and so they're interested in leveraging those brands to create excitement around people who need attention, and they're getting a lot for it. So the deals, a lot of the deals that are being done now are with high minimum guarantees, and ultimately will be unprofitable business models for those who are participating and hoping to make money from people doing digital download revenue through those sources. So, we obviously believe that content is important. We believe that we want to have content in our format, and we've launched a service to allow people to create their own content, sell that content, but ultimately it's a vehicle for driving device sales and for driving revenue through advertising.
Larry, when you're buying content, you're buying a slate of stuff. You get one hit, and you get a bunch of goo. Right?
No,
The long tail is very small. Well, maybe not. But I mean,
well,
this is,
the difference in your cinema is that
all your stuff is great. Thank you.
no, it's not all great, but it's being purchased with a lot of, there's a lot of good movies. There's better than 2 good movies that come out of Europe every year. Okay, but yet the United States has adopted Bologna Play 2 in the theater. So we actually have an office in Paris. We have people that are very, very versed in film. We don't necessarily get it right the first time, but you know what? If you're dealing in a market that's incredibly underserved, I mean, I'll show you pictures of MTV the day it came on, you wouldn't believe what it was looked at. I could show you E! When I started E! We shot on 3/4-inch tape that was industrial because we couldn't afford broadcast. If you have incredibly underserved audiences with passionate markets, if you give them good stuff and you give it to them with thought, they'll be accepting and let you kind of grow with it.
So now Comcast, your contract winds up and they double your price and your cut is much less and you go, what am I going to do?
Well, no. I mean, we've avoided, when we went into the VOD world, one of the first questions is this Comcast proof? Knowing that we walk in there and we'll say, this is beautiful, we'll take it for free, thank you. It's nice, they want your content, but, they want an ad.
Liberty wants it, actually. They're the ones that are going to ask for free.
The nice part about this was we were able to build the service without any Comcast distribution. We were moving to profitability without Comcast distribution. And Comcast will catch up because as we begin to roll out our markets and we have targeted these ethnic communities and communities from all over Europe, including the churches they go to, that will put a demand on that. It'll make Comcast realize a movie's a movie, not just a Hollywood movie is worthy of money. So.
Seagate, content's moving. It's living somewhere. It's living in the home, it's living in the sand, it's living in the network, whatever you want to call it. Can deliver datacast. There's a lot of different places where storage lives. You got Powerline broadband coming in. What are your bets? And I know it's your stuff everywhere, but what's your bets for 2 years from now on where that storage is going to live and the disks?
Right, so what our customers are telling us is that it's going to live in the network and it's going to live in the home. I hate to answer it with both.
This isn't either or.
Yeah, it isn't either or it isn't.
I'm the boss today.
Okay. Our primary, I think our focus is again on what our customers are focusing on. And what we see our customers focusing on from a growth market standpoint is in-home storage. In developed markets, to Bill's point earlier, in places where people want convenience and power of having a full time-shifting digital video recorder functionality for their content, it's in the home. And it's on devices that consumers either own or have in their houses, like the DVR, like the phone, that has storage in it where content is going to reside of all kinds, like the PC, like the portable video player, so on and so forth.
Bill, I'm so happy you don't work at Sun anymore, although I think the stock's going to do pretty good. Okay, cap it. The company's evolved from Spark.com and moved into the most highest powered, lowest power using, lowest cost storage. There must be a service model in there to manage digital delivery of content that's on the network. They got the best mousetrap right now. How are they going to utilize that in the marketplace? Are they powerful enough to take advantage of it? You know, what's the future of Sun and where it's going to be delivered from? Is it going to be the network? Is that 2 years from now? Is that where it's going to be moving?
I'd rather not answer from a Sun-specific standpoint, but if any of you had a chance to either be at MIT's New Media Lab event in New York a couple weeks ago, Bezos from Amazon, I thought, really had an interesting keynote where he spent a lot of his time talking about the elastic compute cloud and network personal storage. And you know, he spent a lot of his time talking about how, you know, Amazon's focusing on that operationally. You know, that consumes a massive amount of his time right now. And I think, you know, the reason being, and Google is maybe the best example of this right now. You know, these massive server and storage farms that offer unique functionality, you know, under $2 per gigabit of storage, and you know, there's a tremendous.
I can get it for you for $1.
Okay. Well, prices are going to continue to trend down, obviously, but you know, it's really there is a services and support model there that takes, you know, the fellow from IBM in a panel earlier today was talking about the consumer CIO and the consumer CTO, you know, acting as a CIO or CTO in your own home, and the complexity of wiring and file transfers. And you know, most of us have home networks, but you know, the only things we have on them are scanners and printers and PCs. We don't have DVRs and you know, game consoles and set-top boxes as of yet. But you know, that's going to change, and I think that the network service providers are going to see that, you know, increasingly as a revenue opportunity versus a cost of doing business. And in order for them to be able to do that, there are going to be these compute and storage grids that they're going to implement as a service model, and companies like Sun and, you know, quite honestly, HP and Dell and IBM are going to be the providers of those.
Fantastic. So just hitch back to the projected approaches on the business model. Sponsored branded versus pure play. We want to spend a couple minutes on everyone's panelist opinion on, is there a subscription content market, or do you think it's going to be more blended to the advertising model? I'm going to start at Motorola.
Yeah, I mean, you know, people have always paid for content. I think it's, you know, either it's, they pay for it one way or the other, right? Content gets paid. At the end of the day, if you're creative, you need to get paid. So you either get paid through an advertising model, or it's so compelling that you say, hey, I don't want to see the ads, I just want to subscribe to it. And you know, cable TV was founded upon that premise and has been very successful. So I think we'll continue to see that model. On the internet, it's that exact same model. It's free, but it's free because it's ad supported at this point. That's why, you know, we have Google at, you know, $300 billion valuation. That's the business model. And I think the service provider that makes it easy for the consumer to buy that content, and you know, whether it's free or it's, you know, subscription based, and view it on any device that he chooses when he so chooses, is the one that's going to win. That makes it easy to do that. Well, I mean, today a CD works because you can take it and put it, you know, anywhere you want.
Larry, 2 years from now, again, I want to cap everything to 2 years because it's easy. 2 years from now, what percentage of your money is going to come from advertising-based content versus subscription and pay-per-view?
In the Euro cinema business, it'll be 100% subscription or pay-per-view.
Okay. That's interesting entry in the marketplace. 2
Well,
years from now.
Well, I guess I agree with Motorola. No, Herschel, essentially there will be a variety of different models there, but I think if you're going to have people pay for something, you have to give them something they can't get today. And so the example of the CD, in my mind, things like Unbox are crazy. You're asking people to pay the same amount for something that's limited to their PC. Come on. So, if there's different models that bring down the price point and allow more flexibility with the media, then I think people will be willing to pay for
So
that.
give me a percentage 2 years from now.
In terms of Divx's business model,
Out in the market.
out in the market, the percentage of what the content is.
Subscription versus, prescription pay-per-view versus ad-supported.
No idea, 100% of each.
Not fair. Mr. James.
Well, I think you got different models that are going to work. I think that for
We need a percentage from you, though. Somebody get this one right.
I agree with 100% across the board. Broadcast quality content, day and date to what's on television, I think will be for the most part ad supported. I think there will be a per-view market. I think a lot of that's going to happen again through the telco.
Give me a percentage 2 years from now.
I'm giving you generalizations of the different markets.
No, I'm not going to wait.
I do not think that ownership, and again, looking at the box market, I don't think ownership is necessarily going to live in the network. I still think that the disc is going to be a big player in that. A lot of the new technologies that are coming and standards that are coming out right now will allow for hybrid abilities to backups into the network, but I still think that the consumer is going to purchase content on the disc.
Rob, tickets to the Lakers, if you answer my question.
A couple of years ago,
I take that back.
I was sitting on these panels and we were having these discussions about whether or not this ability to obtain content on a variety of devices across a variety of networks and take it a variety of places was going to kill the advertising model. Today I think we see that the advertising model remains something that's very crucial, and that savvy marketers are actually using the new capabilities of technology today to make money in ways that they couldn't just a few years ago. So, I'm not going to give you a percentage because I just don't think there's enough information. There is a bit of magic here with creativity and the way people are able to leverage the technology that will determine whether something's going to be ad paid for, whether it's going to be free, where it's going to reside, and how people are going to move it around. But I think that's the key, is that people are going to perhaps be willing to even adopt digital content in as much as they're going to be able to move it around from device to device.
Bill.
Yes. John Stubbs and others from the studios will obviously tell you that, they've got a huge DVD business that they don't want to see cannibalized right away. So, they're going to continue to protect that and emphasize that business. There's a lot of experimentation with, digital distribution and some of that's ad supported, some of it's subscription based. But I think that, it'll be blended depending on the uniqueness and whether it's high premium content or something that's user generated. Where do you start trying to guesstimate what the percentage breakdown is? I don't know. I can't venture a guess.
75-25.
John, what would you say? I'm kind of
Mr.
curious from a studio perspective.
Well, I agree, but I just add one thing. People often say we're the 800-pound gorilla, but we're a monkey. Walmart's the 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah.
Walmart doesn't want to see DVD sales on TV.
Right. Yeah.
And that's gonna.
Very publicly they've stated that. Right?
Yeah. And that's what it's gonna temper the adoption rate.
But as you take a look at the market, just come back from Korea, we've been working a lot with companies like Blizzard and World of Warcraft, speaking of 800-pound gorillas, as they started to adopt and do a delivery direct-to-drive of their application, you're looking at a radical change in the retailer's eyes about what gets sold and how it gets sold and what becomes a service. And as the MMOs are $15 to $25 a hit per user, that's one of the biggest proliferating services and service revenue that's starting to be provocative not only over there in Europe and Asia, but here. If we take a look at that, and content and games and everything gets delivered in this new gateway, you know, where's the dollars going to go from? The next question is, will large industry groups be able to dominate the digital home picture? And I'm going to ask another question, see if I can get an answer. I'm going to ask you to bet a short nickel and a long dime on cable, telecom, mobile, data casting. Who are you going to bet your money on? Who are you going to put money in the stock market on? Where are the majority of the bits going to be delivered through? And I know it's everywhere, but it'd be nice to see where each of you believe which pipes are going to be most efficient and be available to scale. So, Motorola.
In what time frame?
2 years. Yeah.
Cable and telco.
Cable or telco. Who are you gonna
If
bet
you're
on?
talking about large, movies, video, cable.
Okay?
We would bet on a 2-year timeframe. It's cable, not just because of technology, but because of marketing ability.
Even though major markets have a capacity of how many concurrent VODs?
For a service like Eurocinema, we don't get into that kind of, we don't.
You don't, but the people that do, and a hits-based business, which drives a big percentage of the revenue, don't you have some capacity problems?
I truthfully don't see it at all.
In the next 2 years, I don't think it's an issue.
We'll come back to you in a minute. Mr. Divix.
I'll venture telco. Do I get the tickets?
What's that?
I said I'll venture telco. Do I get the tickets?
Tickets to the
Commander's
next panel. You're out of turn. Tell us why.
Well, I just think, the model with respect to cable, I understand the comments, it's fairly established, and so the question there is really one of timing, and so perhaps in 2 years, yes, but I see, more fundamental flexibility and change happening through the telco market, so that's where I would see the most innovation occurring.
Fantastic. Mr. James.
I have to agree. I believe cable in the next couple of years. I think that at the end of the next couple of years, we'll start to see an uptake of telco. To kind of answer your question about the network capacity, I think we see the same thing we've seen every time networks have become congested. Bigger rollouts, hybrid networks, where you start introducing. I wouldn't mind being a telco right now with the cable market taking off the way that it's going to be taken off, because I'll get paid on the back end because I have to lay out the infrastructure.
And now moving to the next question.
It's not just infrastructure, though it's kind of a blend of both. I mean, cable companies are, I think, scratching their heads right now and saying, how can we use perhaps our cable infrastructure as a base delivery method for X number of channels, and then for niche delivery of content that appeals to very specific markets, whether by ethnicity or sports interest or whatever it is. Perhaps we partner with the telco for over-the-top delivery. So there's going to be a blended version of it all, and the growth rates for cable are looking to be fantastic. The growth rate for telco, particularly if you look at the global picture, looks to be phenomenal over the next few years as well.
Bill, you come across a lot of technologies. I mean, we're seeing data casting, Wi-Fi, powerline broadband, which current technology is supervised by that. All those things hold some interesting promise. Any bets other than cable and telecom that are going to be, maybe not your long dime, but a good bet. Extraneous technology.
Kind of coupled with the last question, certainly from a U.S.-centric point of view, cable is dominant. And if from an investor standpoint, the great news about cable is they've gone through their investment cycle in network upgrades, so they're kind of reaping the benefits of that now. So for the next 2 years, it's a very positive environment for them. And the telcos are further behind, and they're making these multi-billion-dollar bets in the U.S. So the return on that's still somewhat questionable. So from an investor standpoint, cable, but the opportunity that I think is really being undervalued right now is satellite in combination with telco. Satellite is still obviously the most efficient broadcast delivery mechanism, and when you combine it with a control path via the telco IP link, and then kind of supplementary or complementary services to the satellite, with the downstream capability of telco, I think you've got a pretty unique model. I think hey, AT&T's much happier with their home zone service right now than they are with their UVerse service, and I suspect that may be the case for a couple of years.
So now we got a terabyte of storage in every data, we got DivX in every device, and service, and Technicolor is the back end, and now we're in an environment where everything's available and always on. So now we got net neutrality issues. You got a bunch of different pipes, got a bunch of different content models and business models. I want to understand from each of you the effects of net neutrality. We're looking at large telecoms buying other ones and becoming global dominance again. Remember, myself, feel that a lot of things are threatened in terms of consumer choice as hits are channeled through revenue sharing operations, new content gateways. I'd like to hear your ideas about net neutrality, how it will affect the digital home, domestically and abroad. Bill?
Well, I think fundamentally we have to understand we're in a digital age, and the changes that are taking place are as fundamental as the invention of the printing press here. So I think, frankly, you're seeing a tremendous change in consumer behavior around content creation. The tools for content production and distribution have dropped dramatically. What you're seeing in the blogosphere is the first wave of that, but there will always be forces that serve the lowest common denominator. But just as Eurocinema is able to exploit media to address niche markets with a highly valued product, people are able to leverage technology to essentially create new forms of content and distribute that to massive audiences. And going back to the question of the pipe into the home, one of the benefits of the telco is the upstream bandwidth. And so you're seeing a lot of people becoming content publishers and tools being developed to allow targeted delivery of that content based either on indicated preferences, shared interests with peer groups, et cetera. So that's where we really see a lot of this going. There will always be efforts to kind of control the message and so on through the media, but the doors have been blown open, and we see a real fundamental change.
Net neutrality? Any comments?
No.
Okay. Motorola.
Well, all of our customers are, the service providers, they've spent, billions of dollars, bless their souls, putting in all the infrastructure and, providing the pipes, and they need to get paid for that.
So if they're going to get paid more by pushing hit-based content, and it's going to restrict our access through a broadband connection or a virtual desktop OS, and you can't get access to it other than alternative means, and it's twice as expensive.
Well, so that's, there's going to be competition, right? One of the new sort of technologies, in response to the last question that I wanted to add here, is WiMAX. We look at that as, mobile broadband. And we see that with new entrants that, as well as existing entrants, by the way, not just in the US, and globally, that are going to be able to create, new pipes. And it's wireless, and, again, it's competition, and that's going to drive, if the cable guys, the telcos can, get away with, not having net neutrality, they'll get away with it. But if there's competition, they're going to be forced to, there are alternative providers that will, enable that, then they're going to have to, play ball with that.
Seagate net neutrality issues.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer on the net neutrality thing. Seagate, we feel that, we're going to win.
Device guy,
but,
devices and content flow.
There's so many that, Marshall just talked about the variety of pipelines that are coming out, right? And so it's not just WiMAX, it's digital TV, it's digital radio, it's going to be satellite and delivery of satellite television to the car. Net neutrality winds up being, one of a lot of issues with who's going to pay for which networks. And it's not just going to be the networks people are arguing about today.
Okay, but the cable operations went to an MSO bundled style service, and now things are looking similar, whether it's the wireless carriers or the telecoms that will start accessing and aggregating that stuff too. Bill?
I think consumers will expect a certain quality of service for different forms of communication and entertainment. And in order to ensure that quality of service, the network operators have a right to prioritize packets. Not to block packets, but certainly to prioritize packets. And I think that that's a right they've earned from these massive multi-billion-dollar investments in network build-out.
Fantastic. Looks like we got another couple questions, but do we have some audience questions?
Can I talk about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I think named it 5
This-
or 10.
In 1994, I was paying $500 a megabit per second. I'm paying $20 a megabit per second. Bandwidth adjusts to demand. I did that on my own thing. These are companies that are in it to make money, and telcos, first and foremost, their business comes from selling other businesses. In the mid-90s, we had over congested clearing locations. And every second, third tier ISP got upset because the big telcos were going to private clearing with one another, and they called it unfair. It all worked out. And nobody's sitting here today worried about bandwidth. They would have to really make a decision that they don't want to be in the B2B business anymore. They want to just own the entertainment space and turn away the business customers in order for a telco, or even a cable company. Cable companies are starting to wake up to the fact they're going to talk about this a lot. They own the iPads. I personally think that net neutrality, and this might be an unpopular feeling, but I think it might go the way of running out of IP address spaces and Y2K. I think that it will work itself out.
Do we have a V6 champion in the audience?
What was that?
Do we have a V6 champion in the audience?
No, not really. But I think it'll work itself out. I don't think that's going to kill Delmar.
Thank you. Questions from the audience? Mr. Stubbs?
Yeah, you asked a question earlier, which device is going to be the dominant device in the home? You know, and it occurred to me about a month ago, maybe the best marketer on planet Earth kind of answered that question. And I wonder if the panel thinks is he wrong. I mean, he laid out a vision for what the home will be, probably for the next.
Is this my dad?
No, it's Steve Jobs, and
Oh.
it was, and he laid it out pretty, in a way that only he can do. And he owns a company with 80% market share in a segment of the digital download market.
Who wants to take that?
I'll take it.
Thanks.
So it may be true that we'll all be living and paying our obeisance to King Jobs, but it may also be the case that what Apple is doing is helping move the market along, but there's a variety of other companies who want to participate in those same types of use cases. So we believe that the use case that's being espoused is a powerful one. Our approach is to enable all the CE companies who want to participate in that space to deliver a similar type of experience. So, at the end of the day, I think it's extremely unlikely that one company will control that. However, as we've seen with the previous Magic, there is a significant benefit to all of us in having people succeed and focus on that. And ultimately, there will be other types of devices that provide the same type of behavior. But if you have a closed ecosystem, there's always going to be people who are seeking to break that open. And in Apple's case, it's very, very locked in. So
Actually, that wasn't just the question. I mean, you asked which device, and what he laid out was a multi-device world. I mean, that was more of the gist of the question is, he said, gee, I'm going to put this new wireless thing.
I guess the challenge with that is new devices around new use behaviors. So the challenge there is you're selling a new device at a $300 price point, and consumers are forced to, determine if there's enough value in that. And so, we think an approach that will be more successful in the near term is to add that functionality to devices that people already understand, but to be able to do so at a small increment in cost. So for example, if you have a DVD player, high-end DVD player selling for $79, if you could deliver the same functionality that ITV product will have at $99, we think the consumer will buy that product. For the most part, will use it as a DVD player, but it gives them the opportunity to kind of explore this new use case and determine how valuable that is. So,
As well, if, and one of my concerns again is trying to understand, what's the risk for the content owners. And one of the problems with iTunes and the iTunes solution is it's a walled garden network. It's iTunes. I can't plug my Zune into it. I can't plug anything else into it. It's a very closed network. My hope for the studios is that that's recognized and that's understood, and that's managed going on. Because one of my fears right now is that in some regards, a lot of these deals that are going through today, that the content owners are giving away the keys to the kingdom. In the traditional world, a studio owned quality assurance on their presentation. They own security on the presentation. They own the box art, the house that was presented. They're giving all of that up right now to all of those service providers. And my fear is that when they realize it, they will be in a position to take it back.
I mean, the content profits have been underwritten by hardware sales at iPod, so they've been overpaying, and now they're getting caught with their pants down. So we got an issue. Yes, yes.
Just a follow-up question. I totally agree with you. iTunes, or that whole thing's a walled garden. But do you think that Amazon, Google, AOL are also walled gardens? And Zune, and, I mean,
Today, yes.
everybody picks on iTunes because they got such a big market share, but the problem is when, iTunes comes down to earth,
Yep.
now we're gonna have 30 walled gardens. Now tell me about that mess.
And that's a huge mess. That's you're now talking about how many different codecs. You as a studio having to give out all this content. How many different codecs? How many different frame rates? How many different DRMs? This becomes from a content owner's perspective, a logistical nightmare to manage. From who are my retailers? As well as, is my content actually being secured? I mean, how am I making sure that these networks are closed and these networks are tight? But from a consumer perspective, it's also a mess because now I do have this huge array of different DRMs and codecs that I can't talk to. Only my iTunes device will work in one format. My Zoom will work in another format. My Unbox will work in another format. It's not conducive to an open environment where a consumer feels he has the same rights to take his DVD out of his one DVD player and put it into another DVD player and it plays the same way.
They haven't kicked us out yet. I don't mind taking another question. Yes, sir.
You mentioned that Sony sells a product in Asia that was able to move content around the home. Why don't we have that in the U.S.? Why doesn't Motorola, for instance, put Wi-Fi in a set-top box and you have multiple sort of dumb Wi-Fi receivers on other TVs in the home, or Cisco on Scientific Atlanta? Why don't they sort of find the Linksys and the set-top box and do some sort of thing like that? Why is
We're actually productizing that, but it's not, there's two aspects to it. The products that you're talking about is you're getting those boxes from, Comcast or Time Warner or a cable provider. Well, guess what? Right now, I didn't invent the Wi-Fi channel, and the user experience for Wi-Fi, unfortunately, today is you gotta be a PhD to configure with the hex code and all that stuff, right, to make them work. And until it becomes, brain dead simple, where you just plug it in and it works, and don't have to do anything to it. And we're doing that, by the way. So now we are providing boxes that have, what we call the MoCA standard, which is basically, internet over coax. And that's going into our set-tops, so you'll be able to network your set-tops within the home and move content from one room to the other through that. And so that is starting to happen there. But it needs to be a very simple user experience. That's the key thing.
Sorry, there's a follow-up. You couldn't hard code in that the SSID and the
yeah, you can, but then
web code and sell it as like a kit with 4 boxes all together.
Yeah, you can, but you're talking. The audience in this room is not the audience. You take somebody in Des Moines or somewhere, and you're gonna buy a kit and do all of that. it's
Nothing against people in Des Moines.
Yeah.
They're all busy watching Euro Cinema.
It's just, you know, it's gotta be brain dead simple, plug and play. That's what it works today, right? You come in, you put your TV on, and it works.
I heard an interesting theory on this. In Japan, you know, you have all the walls are tissue paper, you know, so Wi-Fi goes through those real easily. The East Coast of the US and Canada and all that, you know, you big thick stone brick walls and, you know, Wi-Fi really doesn't work as well in many parts of the country. And it's all because of the way the walls are.
Hey, Wi-Fi, it's still expensive. Somebody's got to pay for it. It still comes out of a data center somewhere. On the final note, Larry, I just want to know what Euro movie we got to be watching out for.
Well,
What's the hot movie from coming from Europe?
right now, I think it's something, well, we've been featuring something called Montes.
What's it called?
Montes.
Amantes? You heard it from the content guy. Thank you for joining the panel. Have a nice day.